Welcome to episode 14 of Lachie Does Footy. We are going to be reviewing round 13, taking a look at how I did in the footy tips in round 13, the ladder after round 13, the breakout players I predicted for the bye teams, and we will look at the round 14 predictions. Adelaide versus Richmond VFL at Adelaide Oval, which I wouldn't call Richmond VFL anymore. Back to being Richmond, they won by 8 points. Toby Nankervis had a great game in the ruck with 43 hit-outs. Jordan Dawson had 32 touches in the midfield for the Crows. As for the goal kickers, Darcy Fogarty kicked 3 goals for the Crows. Noah Cumberland kicked 3 at the other end for Richmond. 3 players kicked 2 for Richmond. And Billy Dowling had a surprising debut with 17 touches and a goal. As for Richmond, although it's too little too late, but they've got their second win of the season. As for the Crows, it's basically too little too late. Season is pretty much done. Western Bulldogs versus Brisbane at Marvel Stadium. Also note, as some YouTubers called it, the other Friday night game. The Brisbane Lions got up by 43 points. Eric Hipwood kicked 6 goals that game for the Lions. Danaher kicked 2 free, but he could have got more. Zach Bailey and Lachie Neale with 2 goals each. Another 30-touch game for Adam Treloar for the Bulldogs. Lachie Neale and Zach Bailey played very good with 2 goals. Jared Berry had another great game tagging Marcus Botsapelli. As for the Bulldogs, they've been throwing a massive curveball. As for Brisbane, I think it might be too early to tell that they're back, as the other game that other YouTubers called the actual Friday night game was the Div 12 Resi's game between Elizabeth and Lockleys, which Lockleys got up by a point. Hawthorn versus GWS at Utah Stadium. Hawthorn won the game by 6 points. Lockie Whitfield had a great game with 30 touches. Will Day had 10 tackles in the midfield. Well, and for the other stats, let's go to the goal kickers. Xavier O'Halloran with 4 goals for GWS. Jack Gunston 3 goals for Hawthorn. Mabiel Chol kicked 2 goals. Same with Connor McDonald and Luke Bruce. And I think couldn't see Jack Jenovan on the scoreboard. As for Hawthorn, they're full of confidence. Their season's getting back on the right track. That's for GWS. They need to fix some things. They want to keep their finals hopes alive. Their season might be on the ropes. West Coast versus North Melbourne at Optus Stadium. As there's something I like to say, well, close your eyes and count to 10. There is something I need to say, and which is something that's going to alarm you. North Melbourne have won! About time! They got up by 9 points. Nick Lachie kicked 5 goals up forward for the Kangaroos. He needs only 1 more goals to hit the 105 mark, which I predicted earlier. Jai Sepkin with 2 goals for North Melbourne. Zach Fisher, 36 touches. Tristan Sherry, 32 hit-outs and 10 tackles. Jai Sepkin, another 28 touches. As for, West Coast, they didn't do anything that game much except for losing and letting Harry Sheasel get 30 touches. As for North Melbourne, it's got a bit of a confidence on the board. Although season's over for both teams, there's something the North Melbourne team manager has done after the game. Held up the lyrics to the song on the board because they don't remember it. Well, the St Kilda game's finally over. What a dull and boring game that was. It was 51-48. Sam Flanders had 42 of the most useless touches out there. Jack Sinclair's had 31 touches, and what's the point? Dan Butler kicked 3 goals for the Saints. Jack Higgins and Max King 2 each. Ben King 2 goals. This is looking like looks like the COVID-19 pandemic is officially back to 2020 levels. Might as well be time to lock down the country. As for St Kilda and Gold Coast itself, get them out of the AFL. Very boring game. Sydney versus Geelong at the SCG. Geelong got good in the first quarter, holding Sydney goalless, and then after that it was all Sydney. Papley and Amani kicked 7 goals between them, and I've got 3 things to say. Gordon, Warner, Heaney. Somebody call the police! Yes, and the Broad Squad have done it again. They've lost the second week in a row. 26 points to Carlton. Elijah Hollands kicked 3 goals up forward for Carlton. Charlie Kerner with 2 goals, along with Zach Williams and Alex Chincotta. Nick Martin kicked 2 goals, and Matt Wilfie kicked 2 goals. As for Chincotta himself, he played a very good game on Zach Merritt to tag him. And that is all I need to say about yesterday's Carlton game. Wouldn't be surprised to see them out of the 8 near the end of the week as their losing streak will continue. Collingwood versus Melbourne at the MCG. The best part about their game was Big Free Slide 10 to pay tribute to those who were fighting MND. It was for a good cause, raising a lot of money for that, which is to pay tribute to Neil Danaher. As for the game itself, Collingwood by 38 points. The only one who signed good signs was Max Gawn. 45 headouts in the ruck. Van Rooyen 3 goals up forward. Pickett 2 goals for, and French 1 goal for. And they got a new recruit in the medical staff, Dr. Nick from The Simpsons. Previously worked as a quack. Then he went to the Port Adelaide Football Club and let Connor Rosie play. Then he went to Melbourne and let Christian Petrarca play with 4 broken ribs and a punctured lung. As for Collingwood, they played very good. Jack Crisp won the medal with 27 touches and 4 tackles. Josh Dacos had another 34-touch game. Harvey Harrison and Nathan Kruger, 3 goals each. As for Collingwood, I wouldn't be surprised to see them in the top 4 very soon. As for Melbourne, well, their season's almost over. Well, we look at the footy tip this week. Adelaide versus Richmond, I picked the Crows, Richmond got up. Bulldogs and Brisbane, I picked the Bulldogs, so Brisbane got up. Picked Hawthorn to beat GWS, they got it done. I picked West Coast to beat the Roos, but the Roos got it done, however. Picked St Kilda over the picked Gold Coast over St Kilda, Saints got it done in a boring game. Sydney and Geelong, I picked the Swans, nothing much said. Essendon and Carlton, I picked the Blues. Season's back on track for Carlton. As for Collingwood and Melbourne, I picked Collingwood. Total score is 63 out of 114, and the score for the week was 4 out of 8. Now we move on to the ladder after round 13. Top of the table, we got the Sydney Swans. They just keep winning. Nothing much said. Carlton are second on the ladder. They've just won 3 games in a row. Essendon, they're third on the ladder. They've lost 2 in a row. Let's see how they go against the bye this week. Fourth, we got Port Adelaide. They stayed the same. Fifth, we got Geelong. They've won 1 out of the last 5 games. They need to start picking up some form, otherwise it's time to retire Tom Hawkins. Sixth, we got Collingwood. They are moving up very nicely. Let's see how they'll be there in September. Seventh, you got Fremantle. They lost to the bye last week. Let's see how they go against the Bulldogs. Eighth, you got GWS. Similar to Geelong. Good start. 1 win out of the last 5. Ninth on the ladder, we got the Gold Coast Suns. They're starting to hit some good strides, but they need to start winning away from home. 10th, you got Melbourne. They've won 1 out of the last 5 games. I can't see them dropping any lower unless if Hawthorn beat Richmond by 100 points. 11th, you got the Western Bulldogs. They hit some good form, but they're also hitting some speed bumps at the same time. 12th, you got Hawthorn. They should be able to stay 12th unless they beat the Tigers by 100 points, but they're on the right track winning 4 out of the last 5 games. To the breakout players for the teams that got the bye. For Carlton, I picked Brody Kemp. His disposals went down by 0.2. Marks went down up to 0.3. Tackles went up by 0.8. His efficiency's gone from 76% to 81%. Meters gained has gone down from 237.8 to 226.3. His spoils have gone from 4 to 3.9. Intercepts have gone from 6.1 to 6.3. He's been pretty good in some areas. He's been hitting some more targets. But the actual breakout player is Tom De Koning. For Essendon, we got Zach Reid. He played 7 games 2 years ago, but he got injured last year. He played the 1 game this year, but played 33% of it until he got injured against Hawthorn. The actual breakout player for Essendon is Jai Caldwell. Breakout player I picked for Geelong in pre-season was Tanner Browen. He's played 19 games last year. His disposals went up by 2.2. Marks went down by 1.1. His tackles went down by 0.2. His efficiency's gone from 67% last year to 68% this year. Clearances have gone from 2.9 last year to 5.5 this year. His goals have gone down from 8 last year to 3 this year. His scoring accuracy took a massive hit from 73% last year to 38% this year. And the actual breakout player is Max Holmes. For Melbourne, my breakout player I picked was Jack Billings. He's had 11% less game time since he moved from St Kilda to Melbourne. He's played 11 games this year for Melbourne. His disposals went down by 0.6. His marks went up by 0.2. His tackles went up by 0.1. They all stayed the same. His efficiency went down to from 76% at St Kilda to 66% at Melbourne. His clearances have gone down from 0.7 at St Kilda to 0.4 at Melbourne. His goals stayed the same. His scoring accuracy is low again, gone from 25% to 20%. And the actual breakout player is Jacob Van Rooyen. West Coast pre-season, I picked Elijah Hewitt to be my breakout player. He looked really good last year, looked to be a great young player, but this year he hasn't played at all because of his injury he's had, and there's not much to say about him. The actual breakout player for West Coast is Jake Waterman. Gold Coast, I picked Mac Andrews, my breakout player. He's played 10 games this year. His disposals went up by 6.4, tackles went up 1.9. Tackles stayed the same, his marks went up 1.9. His efficiency went from 76% last year to 79% this year. 1% have gone from 4.1 last year to 4.8 this year. His spoils have gone from 3.8 last year to 4.7 this year. His intercepts have gone from 4.8 this year to 8.7 this year. I got that one right with a Gold Coast breakout player. He's been an important piece to the Gold Coast defence this season. And now we move on to the predictions for round 14. First game, we got Brisbane St Kilda at the Gabba on Friday night. This is a game St Kilda are looking to end Brisbane's season right here. As for Brisbane, they are looking to win this game to keep their finals hopes alive. As for the game itself, it should be an exciting game for St Kilda. They need to not be boring. For the game, I got Brisbane by 44 points. Best players for Brisbane, I'm going with Eric Hipwood, Josh Dunkley for the game. St Kilda, I'm going with Ryan Marshall in the ruck and Marcus Windhager. Bulldogs versus Fremantle at Marvel Stadium. And this is the first time in Lachie Does Footy history I'll be saying this game is a repeat game. Fremantle won by 24 points last time around, back in round 7 in Perth. And this time we're at Marvel Stadium for this game. We got Fremantle by 14 points. Best players for Freo, I got Luke Rock, Jordan Clark and Caleb Sarong. Western Bulldogs, I'm going with Marcus Bontempelli. And that is all I can say about this game right now. Richmond versus Hawthorn at the MCG. This game is Dustin Martin's 300th game. For this one, I'm going with Hawthorn by 20 points. Hopefully Richmond can show up for Dustin Martin on his 300th game. And so I got him the best player, of course, for Richmond. As for the other best players, I'm going with Shea Bolton and Tim Taranto in the midfield. As for Hawthorn, I'm going with Connor McDonald, John Newcomb and Will Day. It should be a good game of footy. Hawthorn are in great form and Richmond don't run them off just yet in this match. Adelaide versus Sydney at Adelaide Oval. Last year, Ben Keys nearly won the game for the Crows but hit the post and they lost by a point. As for this year's edition of the game, well, Sydney only seem to lose to the bottom teams. As for Adelaide, they need to win to keep their season alive, which I've got the Crows winning by a point in an upset as revenge for the robbery game last year. Best players for the Crows, I'm going with Tex Walker, Isaac Rankin and Jordan Dawson against his old team. Sydney, I'm going with the Big Three. North Melbourne versus Collingwood at Marvel Stadium to kick off Sunday football. I expect this game would be a snooze fest. As for although North Melbourne are starting to show something after their win over West Coast. As for Collingwood, they beat Melbourne by 38 points. For this game, I got Collingwood by 24 points, with North showing up for a little bit. Best players for North, I'm going with Harry Sheasel, Luke Davies-Uniacke, and Nick Lachie up forward. Collingwood, I'm going with Bobby Hill, Josh Dacos, and Jack Crisp. And that's all I need to say. GWS versus Port Adelaide at Giants Stadium. This is an important game for both teams. GWS need to win this game to keep their finals hopes alive. Port Adelaide need to win this game to stay top 4. This is the first time they meet at Giants Stadium. Well, since famously when GWS beat Port Adelaide back in 2012. As for the game itself, I'm going with GWS by 20 points, similar to 12 years ago. Best players for GWS, I'm going with Toby Green. He played in that game. Jesse Hogan and Tom Green. Port Adelaide going with Zach Butters, Jason Horne-Francis and Todd Marshall. That's it for episode 14 of Lachie Does Footy. I hope you enjoy it and we'll see you next week for episode 15 where we look at the final week of bye round and we're going to be retiring this breakout player segment.